that, according to economists, US suspends all arms supplies to Ukraine. Yesterday, I reported during the first stream and also during the second news update that I published on Patreon and Boosty pages that there was reports about partial suspension of certain weapons supplies to Kiev regime, mainly air defense missiles and guided missiles. But later on, additional information become available, additional reports that US is actually suspending all arms supplies whatsoever. Obviously, Russian media outlets did pay attention to this. And for example, this is TASS's report that US authorities have stopped deliveries of all types of weapons and munition to Ukraine. This was reported by the Economist magazine, citing Ukrainian officials. According to according to Ukrainian officials, they are associating these actions by Washington with their knocking out political concessions from Kiev, as well as the case in March after the squabble of White House between US President Donald Trump and Vladimir Zelensky. Well, I don't know if current decisions in White House are connected with that row that Trump and Zelensky had. Also, J.D. Vance, Vice President in Oval Office in White House. But I already see in the comment sections, by the way, some optimistic claims from people all over the world that maybe America First forces finally regain initiative in the White House. That would be good, of course. That would be good, but I'm not as optimistic, unfortunately. I mean, we have to wait and see what is going on, because simultaneously with these reports about suspension of arms supplies to Ukraine, we also have quite a number of indicators to conclude that Washington might actually further escalate with Russia. Not de-escalate, but further escalate. So therefore, it is difficult to have a clear reading of the picture right now in regards to this topic. But yet again, US officials are actually confirming for now suspension of the military aid to Kiev. We have this report on RT, for example, that US is suspending its supply of weapons to Ukraine as a part of its America First policy. Washington's envoy to NATO, Matthew Whitaker, has told the Fox Business America needs to make sure it has enough air defense systems in its own arsenal before anything else, he stated. And once again, dear friends, according to reports, US is suspending, allegedly, weapon supplies to Kiev regime completely, not just our air defense systems, but whatever weapons were promised. Nothing is going to Ukraine. But yet again, this is all speculation still. I believe more time is needed and more information for a more clear picture. Meanwhile, according to TASS news agency, Ukraine has not yet received notification from the US about the cessation of arms supplies. We have reported that Ukraine has not yet received official confirmation from the American side about the cessation of supplies of Patriot air defense missiles and the number of other weapons. This was stated by Fyodor Venislavsky, member of the Verkhovnaya Rada Committee on National Security, Defense and Intelligence. Verkhovnaya Rada is, of course, parliament in Ukraine. And meanwhile, Kiev regime summoned U.S. embassy staff in connection with this topic. So Ukraine has summoned the U.S. charged the affairs in Kiev, John Ginkel. I don't know what that position even means, by the way. U.S. charge the affairs in Kiev. I don't know. Staff member of U.S. Embassy, John Ginkel, following reports that Washington has suspended deliveries of key weapon systems. Military experts and Western officials all warn that the country cannot sustain conflict in the short term without continuing military support. And a number of Western media outlets actually claimed, based on this information about suspension of US weapons deliveries, that Kiev regime's forces might last only before end of this summer, if with current weapons they have, and with whatever assistance European NATO members are providing. That's how vital for survivability of the Kiev regime and its armed forces, US weapon supplies are. And yet again, let's see how things are gonna develop. Press spokesman of the Russian president, Dmitry Peskov, commented on the matter and made a statement that less weapons Kiev regime will receive, sooner this conflict will end, which is true, which is absolutely true, by the way. If collective West countries under leadership of US did not get engaged in this proxy war against Russia, then this conflict will end in April, May of 2022. And as we all remember, dear friends, due to negotiations in 2022, in March, April, between Russian delegation and the Kiev regime's representatives, initially in Belarus, then in Turkey, in Istanbul, even agreements were reached, preliminary agreements, but still were reached by sides to end their hostilities. But then globalist control regimes in UK, in US, US at the time was controlled by globalists completely, by the way, because obviously Democrats are assets of the globalists. And so they went in, right? They sent their representatives into Kiev from US. I believe high-ranking officials from CIA and Pentagon, also State Department, went into Kiev. From UK, at the time, Prime Minister Boris Johnson himself traveled to Kiev to derail these talks between Moscow and the Kiev regime, and unfortunately they did it successfully. And since then, so much destruction and the death did occur due to this involvement of the collective Western countries. But nevertheless, Peskov definitely has a point in his statements. Less weapons Kiev regime will receive from NATO member states. Sooner this conflict will end. No questions about that. And on this matter also, dear friends, we have reports that, Germany now is being considered by European NATO member states as a main donor for Western-backed terrorist regime of Zelensky, and the European NATO member states are actually going to use Germany as a piggy bank, sort of, to further finance this proxy war against Russia and finance also weapon deliveries. And Germany not even denies this. German state-financed media, so-called media outlet Deutsche Welle, for example, reports that Germany is taking over as the main sponsor of the war in Ukraine, replacing the United States. And by the way, this is reported by Deutsche Welle, right? They have no shame, isn't it? They have no shame. They have no love. They don't love their own country, their own people, clearly, because how are you going to be happy about your country and taxes of your people being used as a sort of a piggy bank by the globalists or whomever? I don't get it, But Deutsche Welle stuff is something extraordinary, I guess, right? They hate probably their own country and their own people. To continue, dear friends, we have this report from TASS News Agency, which is based on Defense Ministry's latest update from this morning, that Russian armed forces liberated Milovoye settlement and Razina settlement in the DPR and the Kharkov region. Let me show you on the map these areas, dear friends. So when it comes to Milovoye, it's somewhere here, I believe, right on the border. Yes, this is the settlement, by the way, which is under Russian control. And previously, by the way, on this part of a border between Russian Federation and the Kharkov region. There was no active military operations conducted, and because Russian troops went in and cleared the settlement from enemy forces, that might be an indicator that maybe Russian troops will begin creating a buffer zone this direction also. And when it comes to another settlement that was liberated, Razina settlement that was liberated in DPR. Well, this is the Razina settlement, relatively small village, but very important one right now due to the situation on the line of contact. Because if you take a look, dear friends, from Razina, Mirnograd is just I don't know, 1-2 kilometers away, and if Russian troops are already in control of this settlement, that means process of encirclement of across Mirnograd agglomeration is further accelerating, right? And I guess it will take maybe few more weeks, and all supply and support lines of the garrison, Kiev regime's garrisons in Pokrovsk and Mirnograd will be under direct Russian fire control. Significant progress of the Russian armed forces in this direction. And in addition, dear friends, let me also give you information that according to reports, Russian armed forces established full control over the Nikolaevka settlement, which is also DPR on the southern western side of Chisov Yar. And well, I guess one may argue that battle for Chisov Yar has ended. There are some small groups in vicinity of Chisov Yar itself, small groups of Kiev regime's forces that are continuing to fight, but basically city mainly is under full Russian control now, and at any day we might receive report from Russian Defense Ministry that battle for Chisov Yar has ended and city is completely liberated from enemy forces. This might happen today, tomorrow, at any point now, because clearly, slowly but surely, Russian troops were improving their positions in this area. Battle for Chisov Yar lasted for many months. It was a very difficult battle, but as we all were expecting, battle is ending with Russian victory. To continue, dear friends, let's talk about this report that I shared on my Telegram and Twitter X page that, well, according to several sources, a warehouse with Western weapons, including cruise missiles, exploded in Zhytomyr, which is controlled currently by the terrorist regime of Zelensky. And there was a huge explosions, by the way. Officially, we don't have any confirmations that it was a military warehouse or what exactly exploded. Kiev regime is keeping quiet about it. But let's take a look at the videos, by the way, from the side. What is also interesting, according to reports, there were no air raid alert at the time of explosion. So therefore, maybe either Russian DRGs were operating in the area and destroyed this warehouse or munition depot, or maybe there was some human error on part of Kiev regime's forces, and as a result of that error, this explosion happened. But just take a look at their video, by the way. It was a really massive explosion. Look at it, man. Huge explosion. And there is another video also. So according to some reports that I see, all the buildings, all the warehouses in that area of explosion were completely eliminated. That's how massive these explosions were. And well, during the day, probably we will receive some more information. But yet again, it is interesting that according to reports, there was no air raid alert at the time of these explosions. If preliminary information is correct, and the Kiev regime lost significant number of Western weapon systems, ammunition, and so on, including cruise missiles. Well, that will be great news, I will say, for Russian side. Excuse me. Let's continue, and we have this interesting report from Vzгляд newspaper, which is based on information of TASS news agency that well, Kiev regime since the beginning of 2025 lost 265,000 troops in the zone of special military operation, and also in a Kursk salient area, while Kiev regime and NATO mercenaries were occupying some parts of, borderline parts of Kursk region. Colossal losses, isn't it? But let's go for some details here. So TASS calculations show a significant increase in the losses of the Ukrainian armed forces in the first 6 months of 2025, including both personnel and military equipment. Total losses of armed forces of Ukraine from January to June 2025 amounted to more than 265,000 servicemen killed and wounded. In June, according to reports from the Russian Ministry of Defense, the number of losses reached approximately 45,000, and that's in a single month, by the way. While over the previous 5 months, this figure was about 222,000. So combined losses in 6 months are more than 265,000, colossal number. And once again, whenever we are receiving information about losses on both sides, one should keep in mind that this would not happen if NATO countries did not get engaged, if collective West countries did not orchestrate coup d'etat in 2014 and did not use extremists basically to launch initially civil war in the eastern part of Ukraine, which eventually break away completely and after referendums become part of Russia. Nothing of this kind will happen if not the collective West and its destructive involvement, right? So colossal losses. It's a tragedy, by the way, obviously, isn't it? It's a tragedy for Russian world because vast majority of people that are living in that former Soviet Republic are Russians, are part of Russian world, and they've been sacrificed, by the way, by NATO countries to achieve their geopolitical goals. One of which is to, achieve strategical defeat of Russia. It's not going to happen, but that's what they are trying. In terms of military equipment, Ukrainian army has lost 13 aircraft in 6 months, 22 anti-aircraft missile systems, 69 multiple launch rocket systems, and almost 4,000 tanks and other armored vehicles. That is obviously infantry fighting vehicles, armored personnel carriers, armored carriers, trucks, and so on. So up to 4,000 different type of armored vehicles were destroyed. Also, 6,727 artillery pieces and mortars were destroyed. 7,800 units of special military vehicles and over 27,000 drones were destroyed. As Vzгляд newspaper wrote the day before, the total losses of the Ukrainian armed forces in one day, previous day, amounted to 1,235 servicemen, 2 armored personnel carriers, and tank, 13 artillery pieces, 9 vehicles, and 13 electronic warfare systems, according to Defense Ministry's report. So colossal losses, by the way, colossal losses of manpower and military equipment on part of Kiev regime. No wonder collective West is losing this proxy war against Russia, and they're going to lose 100%. I mean, veterans of our community know that I never had even slightest doubts that Russia will emerge victorious in this war that West is waging against us. And probably you are interested in how Russian army is doing. And yesterday, former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev and current deputy chairman of the Security Council, while meeting with the military leadership, stated that more than 210,000 soldiers, more than 210,000 citizens of Russian Federation signed a contract with the Russian armed forces and joined the military, which is a huge number, isn't it? This is people that voluntarily joining Russian armed forces. It's a huge influx, isn't it? Every single month, 20, 30, 40,000 people are joining armed forces. And also, according to Medvedev, 18,000 people are volunteering without pay, by the way, just volunteering themselves to assist Russian armed forces to be engaged in a humanitarian activity and whatever activity is needed. So that's the situation, by the way. Russia definitely has huge reserves, and are able to constantly conduct rotations on a battlefield, which Kiev regime cannot do due to absence or significant lack of manpower. And obviously, this war fatigue, plays also a crucial role on part of Kiev regime's forces. And in many instances, they are fleeing positions after battle or two. Eventually, they are just running away because they are just too tired, and they are unable to carry on. And there are also entire units, by the way. One should keep in mind that there is many instances when entire units of the Kiev regime forces, when Russian troops are approaching their strongholds, are contacting Russian militaries and are surrendering. Entire units. Vzгляд newspaper is also reporting that, according to Financial Times, by the way, British, that is, isn't it? Western media outlet, Kiev might have been behind the recent oil tanker bombings. So there are a series of recent damages to oil tankers may be linked to actions of the Ukrainian intelligence services, the Financial Times reports. This media outlet, citing sources in the security sector, reports that Ukrainian special services might be behind these attacks. According to publication, initial information pointed to Ukraine's possible involvement in these sabotage acts. One of their security advisors said, initially, all signs are pointed to Ukraine. At the same time, experts emphasized that other versions cannot be ruled out, including the involvement of structures from Libya or other state players with their appropriate resources and their motives. And let's be real here, by the way, it's UK, it's a British Secret Services and their proxy Kiev regime, obviously. I spoke about this topic even yesterday, I believe, right, or day before yesterday, many times, by the way. And there is a lot of indicators, a lot of evidences that United Kingdom is actively engaged in a terrorism against Russia, and they are using their proxy Kiev regime for that. London is definitely on offensive against Russia, and citizens of UK, by the way, should pay attention to this, because at one point Russia will retaliate hard, and they should know that it was not us that initiated this. It was their own government, their own elites in UK that were engaged in terrorist attacks on Russia, all sorts of hostile actions, and obviously every country, by the way, in that situation, as Russia is right now, would have every legal reasons whatsoever to retaliate with their and Russia will, let's say that way, by the way. Basically, Financial Times confirmed what I was talking about for so long now, isn't it? Hello, everyone. I hope you find informative and useful this short clip from main news update. And if so, please click that like button and leave some commentary just about anything. It might help to deal with the algorithm and reach wider audience. And if you like my work in general and want to support to save this media project. You can assist through several ways. You can donate to this project through PayPal platform or Boosty, also with the crypto currencies, or you can subscribe to my Patreon page and page on Boosty, where I have quite a lot of extra content on regular basis. All the links are on this video in description box and in the pinned comment. And of course, many thanks to everyone who already helped and continues to support. Thank you.